I heard the rails start their low winter song before any whistle split the air. Iron talks to iron when cold tightens it. The notes travel through snowfields the way a rumor travels through a small town, quiet and certain. Far north of anywhere sensible, a line of track cuts across ice and memory, and on nights when the world most needs reminding of its own magic, a lamp appears on that horizon and grows into a headlight. The workshop stilled when it began. Hammers paused above toys that were one good tap from finished. Paint settled itself politely inside bristles. Even the reindeer inclined their heads, because hooves know cousins when they hear them. And a locomotive in winter is a kind of cousin. Muscle, breath, rhythm, purpose. I stepped outside into the clean dark. The aurora was busy folding and unfolding its silk. The cold had that honest sting that makes lungs remember they're alive. From somewhere south, a train breathed. You might think a sleigh and a train conduct separate business. Most years, yes. But there are nights when the two of us, steam and sleigh bells, share a timetable. The train gathers those who are ready to have their doubt argued into awe by something louder than a lullaby. I do the rest. I don't keep their tickets, I keep their mornings. It started miles away, then minutes, then a heartbeat. The Polar Express, though we never call it that aloud up here, as if naming it would pin it down and ruin its best trick, shouldered into the yard with a courtesy uncommon in machines that powerful. It hissed out a ribbon of white that drifted toward the stars and pretended to be cloud for a while. Its sides were the deep color of midnight after a story, the kind of blue that almost remembers black. Brass fittings shone the way brass only shines when hands that take pride have polished it. Windows glowed with lamplight and faces. The engineer leaned from his cab, cheeks pinked by duty and weather both. He is a quiet man of few foolish ideas and many good ones. His hand rests on the throttle, as other hands rest on the shoulders of friends. Beside him stood the conductor, trim, tidy, with a pocket watch that measures more than time. He tipped his cap to me, and I returned the favor. Our partnership is older than any schedule. He had started far south, in a city where sidewalks long ago forgot how to be shy. There a boy had pressed his ear to glass to catch a whisper he half believed he'd outgrown. The house he lived in had settled into sensible habits. She was wind up by the door, coats shaking snow from their cuffs, clocks that spoke in exactness instead of dreams. He had read, as some boys do when they are trying on adulthood too soon, a book about how things ought to be. He had tucked away the idea I stand for as if it were a toy he meant to pass down someday without playing with it again. The whistle persuaded the night to open. The train paused in the boys' street as if it had always been part of the route. Steam found the stars and adorned them. The conductor stepped down and looked up to his second-story window with the patience of someone who has taken many people to places they pretended not to want to go. The boy hesitated. He touched the doorknob as if it might bite. He came out in slippers too thin for any wise pavement, pajama legs fluttering like small flags. "Ticket?" the conductor asked, and then he did the thing that matters. He waited without hurrying. The boy looked back at the house, which tried to be brave and didn't know how. Then he stepped forward. That's all belief is in the end. One step toward what calls you. The coach was already warm with coats and mufflers and laughter learning itself again. A girl with a braid sat straight-backed and curious, striped scarf tucked under her chin like a promise. A boy with a cap worn low in the way independent spirits wear things gave the newcomer a nod that meant more than welcome. Other faces, small and not so small, looked out the windows, listening along their bones to the speed the engine was about to remember. I like to imagine steam is a kind of music, and tracks are staves laid across the continent, waiting for a song of urgency and wonder. They sang that night. Trees bowed aside. Snowbanks pretended to be spectators. Farms that had already done their day's work listened as if they were not quite tired. The coaches rattled a rhythm that found its way into hearts, that thought they were too old for rattling. The steward came down the aisle with a tray that didn't merely hold cups, it carried ceremony. Hot chocolate is not trivial if you serve it at the exact moment a journey decides to become real. The boy held his mug carefully, as if heat and possibility were cousins. The girl asked the conductor questions, not to trap him, but to learn the shape of the night's purpose. He answered with the respect curiosity deserves, briefly and well. There is a stretch of track across a frozen lake that gives engineers the same shiver a violinist feels approaching a solo passage. Ice sings when weight traverses it. That night, it sang in long, low notes and kept faith. Wolves paced the shore with the polite distance of neighbors. Owls wheeled and made spirals in air that did not mind being asked to hold them. The engine breathed. The firebox glowed. The headlight insisted. Skates on steel, heartbeat in steam. I kept pace from above. Reins loose, runners whispering. The sleigh needs stars. That night, the train made its own. Lanterns in the coaches burned steady, small suns strung on steel. The boy stared forward more than back. Good. Some journeys only admit progress if you refuse to keep inventory of who you used to be. He stepped off into our yard with that carefulness boys maintain when the ground is made not of dirt, but of promise. He looked up. The workshop windows threw gold into the cold. The great tree in the square wore its light modestly, which is the only honest way to wear light. Children and not quite children from the other coaches formed into a shape that will never be a line, because wonder disobeys geometry. The conductor gathered them with glances more than words. I waited in the place I always wait, not quite centered, not quite hidden. They tell me I'm easy to recognize. Perhaps I've never considered myself a surprise so much as an answer. When the children turned and found me, their sound was not a cheered exactly. It was relief and delight shook together. The girl with the braid lifted her chin as if to say, "Yes, obviously." The boy swallowed as if his throat had found something too big to be called a lump and too real to be called an idea. I made a space with my hands the way you do when you set down something weighty. The first gift of such a night has to be chosen right the first time. Not the biggest thing, not the most complicated, the truest. I keep a pouch at my belt that holds items the workshop cannot mass produce. Their recipes are written in hours and hearts. I drew out a bell, polished silver, small enough to hide in your palm, tuned not to concert pitch, but to the frequency humans use when they are honest with themselves. I tipped it once. It answered with a clear winter sound. Some heads tilted hearing, some mouths shaped O, some eyes widened at nothing and everything. This, I said to the boy, and my voice remembered every December it has ever had to do its job. For you, if you like. He took it, palm open the way palms are when they accept without bargaining. He shook it once. The sound made the night decide to mind its manners. The aurora paused, listening to a note that had nothing to do with ions. He breathed out and smiled without checking whether anyone approved. The girl smiled because he did. The conductor's pocket watch ticked as if pleased to be in a room where time had chosen to be kind for a few breaths. A bell is a simple machine. It turns motion into music. Belief is the same. A decision shaken becomes sound. The boy closed his fingers over it as if to keep the warmth in. The glove he wore had a small tear at the seam. I saw the thread catch on the bell's ribbon and made a note, not with paper, but with that part of memory I save for necessary corrections. We walked the yard together. The children saw the reindeer and made the note everyone makes the first time, larger than imagined, quieter than expected. The team stood because standing is work too. They let small hands find the warm patch between jaw and neck where reindeer keep secrets. The boy did not rush forward. He approached as if approaching a library. He touched, and the reindeer's eyes softened, and some of the boy's questions folded themselves up and agreed to be answered later by better ones. The workshop doors opened because doors behave on this night as if they have ethics. Inside, rows of toys waited to become pieces of mornings. The girl asked how so many things could go to so many houses when there are so many roofs and so few hours. I told her the exact truth. Many hands, long practice, the cooperation of physics when you're polite to it, and the willingness of time to stretch for good causes. She nodded as if she too planned to negotiate with time someday. Outside again, the train sighed in a way only trains know. Impatience dressed as patience. The schedule keeps itself. The conductor gathered his charges. They hesitated with the kind of hesitation you shouldn't scold. Leaving a place of proof requires courage. The boy checked his pocket, touched the bell, and relaxed. He would ride home with weight and sound where doubt had been. We said our goodnights the way I prefer, without fanfare, without speeches. The snow started up again, light as salt shaken by a careful hand. The engine's headlight challenged the dark and won. Steen wrote one last line across the yard, as if signing a ledger. They climbed aboard. The girl took a window seat and pressed her glove to the glass and made a flower of breath on it. The cap-wearing boy pretended not to be sentimental and failed advantageously. The other children settled themselves with the agreeable sighs of the journeyed. The conductor tipped his hat at me again. The engineer eased the throttle forward, the way a man lifts a sleeping child so as not to wake it. As the train rolled, the boy in the second coach leaned his elbow on the sill and shook his bell again, very softly, as if asking whether sound can travel backward. It can. I watched the coaches stitch their way back into the night. Steel wheels turned wonder into distance in the most practical way, one click at a time. Aurora resumed its embroidery. The yard returned to its own business, the business of finishing. I walked back to the workbench where a toy had waited with the patience only unwrapped joys possess. Before I took up the hammer, I pulled a small notebook from my coat and wrote a name I have written before and will write again. Henry. Beside it, I wrote one word, seam, underline. When the train eased to a stop in the boys' street, house roofs strained to look nonchalant. The conductor stepped down and offered his hand the way men should when it matters, without making a fuss of it. The boy stepped onto snow that had the decency to crunch. He turned to the girl. She had the look people get when they have decided to carry something forward. I can hear it, she said, although no one asked. I hope I always can. He nodded, because words were running dear. They parted with a certainty few grown-ups manage. Inside, a tree held the room together the way a good thought holds a day together. Wrapped packages wore their paper properly. Stockings pretended not to be nosy. The boy climbed the stairs in the slow way that feels fast because your heart is being careful. He lay down and held his bell again, and because night is a gentleman, it let him hear it one more time before sleep. Morning behaves differently in houses that have recently hosted a train. Light entered like a polite relative, not with brass band noise, but with steady purpose. Footsteps began their ancient dance. Paper tore. Laughter remembered a key it hadn't used in months. The boy reached for his robe and his bell. His hand found Cocket. Pocket found hole. The bell was not there. Horror is too large a word for such moments, but it begins to assemble. He looked around himself in circles the size of panic, and then smaller circles. The seam had given up an inch when it should have given up none. A ribbon lay like a question on the floor. He pressed lips together in a way that regretted being human. Downstairs, his name was called. He made the choice you hope people make when they have lost something important, and there's nothing to be done just then. He went to be with his people. They had their faces arranged in hopeful ways. They handed packages and made exaggerated guesses to cover the first heartbeats of every reveal. He did his part. Joy is a team sport, but his pocket felt like a mouth that had forgotten its teeth, which is when diligence, the unglamorous cousin of magic, knocked at the door. A small box sat on the first step outside. Snow had decided not to cover it, out of respect. His name written on the lid, correct and clear. No stamp, no footprints, because Snow can be discreet. He opened it with the caution you use on mornings, already full of other surprises. Inside, the bell. It had the mark of travel on it, which is to say none at all. Silver held its mirror. Ribbon tied as it had been, only with a knot more firm because practice is good for knots. A note lay beneath, written in a hand he would one day recognize as the same as the one that had found him before, on another night when he had needed to be found. Mended, it said, for when pockets forget. He shook the bell. It answered, true as ice and warm as bread. A combination people imagine impossible until it speaks to them. All houses cannot hear all bells. This is not punishment. It is physics of the heart. Some ears are busy that day sorting other sounds, boisterous arguments, boiling kettles, obligations. That is allowed. The boy's sister tilted her head, declared it pretty, and was correct. His parents smiled, the way parents smile at small objects imbued with larger meaning, and did not ask for proof. He tucked the bell back into his robe. He would learn to stitch later. For now, believing would do. The years do their work. They make men out of boys and women out of girls, and sometimes children out of the adults those boys and girls become, which is a harder magic, and often the best kind. Seasons turn. Jobs replace chores. Houses change shape. The train does not always pull up at sensible hours, or at all, and people invent explanations that make missing it feel practical. That is fine. Not every winter needs a whistle. I do my rounds. I still keep lists in a book and in my head and on the back of my hand when I'm careless. I still adjust time by the handful when kindness asks for it. I still stand at the edge of big rooms and small hearts and wait for the moment when presence is better than spectacle. Some nights, the bell I gave that boy years ago rings across a distance that measurement cannot touch. He shakes it at a window when his own child is about to give up on a hope she thinks too fragile to survive air. The note arrives. It always has. The train still runs, not every year, not for every person. It arrives for those who have been sensible too long. It comes for those whose heads have gotten heavier than their hands. It stops for the brave, and by brave I mean those willing to look foolish again for a few hours in exchange for remembering how to mean what they say. The engineer is older. So am I. Our habits are tidy. We both like coal that was laid right and plans that were made carefully and adjusted cheerfully. The conductor's watch ticks the same as it did, though I suspect it now measures gratitude as well as minutes. The girl with the braid keeps her promises in a city where people are always late. The boy with the cap can repair anything that moves. The quiet boy with the bell learned to ask questions that make rooms honest. What is the Polar Express really? A locomotive, yes, steel, steam, speed, schedule, but also a proof of concept. That you can start in a place where the floorboards creak with ordinary concerns and within a handful of heartbeats be in a yard where reindeer breathe clouds and a stranger with a list knows your name without mispronouncing it. It is the argument the world makes on behalf of wonder when wonder is tired of defending itself. If a night like that finds you, if a sound arrives that is larger than sense and kinder than noise, do not spend all your time deciding whether to believe it. Put on your slippers, even if they are ridiculous. Accept the hand held out to you. Sit near someone who asks good questions. Warm your fingers on a cup. Look forward more than back. When a gift arrives that is smaller than the space inside you it fills, shake it once and learn its note. Then carry it on quieter days. The way a ship carries a lifeboat, not as an apology, but as a promise. I keep writing names. I keep patching seams in my way. I keep trimming lamps and tightening harness and reminding clocks to work for us instead of against us when they can. The rails whisper south again tonight. The headlight grows, the hiss builds. I adjust my coat, lift my gloves, and step into the yard where steam and bells braid the air. The train will leave on time. I will leave on time. We will meet where we always do, at the place between doubt and delight, where iron sings and snow listens. And if you lean out your window when sensible people are sleeping and hear a note no one else seems to, understand this: we are on schedule. Keep your pocket mended. Keep your ears honest. Keep a hand free for whatever gift fits the shape of your belief this year. Merry Christmas. May your tracks be true, your steam warm, your whistle brave, and your bell always ringing.